All right. Well, today we're beginning a new sermon series in which we begin to go through the book of Genesis. Up to this point, every single week, when we've had our message, we've had our passage for the week, and then what we've done is we've read the passage, and then we say, what we're going to do next is we're going to go back, and we're going to tell the story up to this point. So that way when we read this passage, we understand the context in which it takes place. We understand the part each Bible story plays in the bigger story. Well, today what we're going to be doing is we're going to start going through the book of Genesis. And the purpose of this is we're going back to the very beginning of the story so that we can begin to go through it as one story. What we're going to be doing today specifically is for the first 5 minutes or so, I'm going to kind of explain big picture. This is where we're going with the study of Genesis. And then we're going to start breaking it down more into the first chapter. So the big picture. Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, where does it begin? In the beginning. In the beginning. It's meant to be a phrase that draws you in. It draws you into the fact that in the beginning, when there was just God and nothing else, that's when the story began. In the beginning. And it's supposed to draw you into the beginning of the story so that you're invited in, you're saying, okay, where is this going? So where does it go? You kind of summarize chapter 1. As we look at the stories, we look at the Bible as one big story, let's think about it as it goes. What's chapter 1 of Genesis about? The most natural response? Creation. What is chapter 2 and chapter 3 about? The most natural response? Adam and Eve. Chapter 4, Cain and Abel. And if we begin to do that, though, and almost every single Bible will have those titles in there, what does this become? It becomes a collection of stories about creation. Chapter 1, creation. Chapter 2, Adam and Eve, created human beings. Chapter 3 and 4, Cain and Abel, creation. And we can so subdivide this story that we lose sight of the fact that this book, the Bible, is not meant to teach us about creation. It's meant to teach us about God. What is this about? It's the story of who God is and how He interacts with His creation. The story is about God. And that's why today what we're going to be focusing in on as we look at chapter 1 is what can creation teach us about God? Because that's the point of the Bible, that we can learn who God is. As I was thinking about this week, what can creation teach us about God? I thought about the fact that my wife Jamie and I, we like to watch HGTV, all those home renovation shows. And I've realized, it's not very hard to realize, that every single show produces very different houses. For example, the Property Brothers are very extravagant. Everything has to be grand. Everything has to be stainless steel. Everything has to be the most expensive and the best. For them. So the houses they produce look just like that. Compared to the show Fixer Upper, they're family-oriented. They produce homes for families, convenient for families that actually work, not just the extravagant homes. But what you see from these shows is the designers, the people who do the work, their work reflects them. The family-oriented couple produces family-oriented homes. The extravagant brothers produce extravagant homes. And the same thing is true about creation. We can look at their homes and see what they're like. And we can look at creation and see what God is like. And that's what we're going to be doing today. So, Genesis chapter 1. Genesis chapter 1, verse 1 begins with, in the beginning. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was formless and void and surrounded by darkness. So the first thing God does as He creates the earth is He sees it, and it's now formless and void and surrounded by darkness. But then it tells us the Spirit of God hovers over the waters and says, let there be light. And there's light. And what we can see from this very first thing, let there be light, is what is the earth without God's presence? It's formless. It's void. It's surrounded by darkness. It's a lifeless, uninhabited place that cannot be inhabited. It's completely void of life. But when God shows up, he says, let there be light. And he brings light to what's there so that he can bring about change. But what he's doing is he's preparing this place that's uninhabited for life. And that's what we begin to see on the first 4 days of creation that we'll be going through today, is that without God, the earth would be lifeless. But God, the first 4 days, prepares it for life. So let there be light. What does light teach us? The fact that God brings light in. Well, one of the things he says about it, and he's very distinct, is light is to be separate from darkness. There's white and there's black. There's light and there's darkness. And that's something that we've touched on many times, this theme, in this last fall, in the beginning of winter, was how many times have we talked about Israel being saved from slavery. And they're coming out of Egypt, and what does God say to them? I want you to be separate. Why? Because there's a difference between light and darkness. And Israel was supposed to be a nation set apart. They were supposed to be different. We see themes like this appearing in Genesis. It's not just one time that this separation will come up. So as we move forward, we'll see it again. But what else can we learn about God from the fact that he brought light? Because God desires the world, and he desires everything to be seen and known. He doesn't want it to remain a mystery. He wants it to be known. He wants it to be seen. He wants to prepare it for life. And that's what we begin to see just on day 1. And then moving into day 2, I'm going to read this again because so often, even this week when I was reading it, you read it and you're like, I have no clue what that's saying. Verse 6, day 2. And let there be a vault between the waters to separate the water from the water. Oh, thank you for making that so clear. So what we have in this is let there be a vault that separates the water from the water. So there's water here, and there's a vault here. And so other translators will translate it firmament, or expanse, or a variety of different things. But as it goes on, it tells you what it is. It says, and then he called the vault sky. Or other translations say, and then he called it the heavens. So basically what God did is, at the very beginning, there was waters, and he separated them. And then what he separated them by was the heavens, the sky. What we see from this is God says, there's a place for everything. And I'm going to be the one that decides where it is. And I'm going to be the one that puts it there. And I'm going to be the one that keeps it in order. And I'm going to be the one that organizes it. And he begins to organize, and we see him say, this is the earth, and it has its purpose. And this is the sky, and it has its purpose. And everything in between is exactly where I want it to be. And then what we begin to see him do, it says, he calls it sky, or he calls it the heavens. And then he calls the earth, the earth. Who has the right and the authority to name something? The person to whom it belongs. So we begin to see right away that God is putting everything where it's supposed to be, and then he's demonstrating the fact that I have authority over this. This creation is going to do what I tell it to do. It's going to be where I want it to be, and it's going to serve my purpose. In verse 9, we move into day 3. And the first phrase, we're going to focus in on a couple phrases on day 3, is in verse 11. Then God said, let the land produce vegetation. So day 3, God begins to prepare the dry land, the vegetations, and the seeds. What he says is, God said, let the land produce vegetation. Let the land produce vegetation. And then he goes into what this is. Fruits, vegetables. And at the bottom line, as we summarize what he's producing is, let the land produce life-giving sustenance. Let the earth produce what's needed for life to be sustained here on earth. This is really significant. Because what it is God is commanding earth to produce what's needed for life to be lived. God is commanding earth to produce food so that life can be lived. Why is that so significant? Well, what happens if we erase God out, which was what the world does? If God doesn't command the earth to produce food, and the earth produces food because of God, if there is no God, who is producing life-giving food? The earth. So what does that mean? The earth, creation, is keeping us alive. Creation is providing for us. Creation is giving us life. So who is the life giver now? Creation is. Thus, who is God? Creation. Because what Genesis goes through is, without God, the earth would be lifeless and void and uninhabited. But God prepares the earth for life, and He tells it to produce things that can sustain life. But what people in our world have done now is they've taken God out of the creation, out of all of this, and they say, the earth provides for us. The earth is our mother. And what they're saying is, we don't have a father, we have a mother. And our mother, she provides for us. And what happens here is, God, who's supposed to be worshipped and praised and glorified, is no longer worshipped and praised and glorified. Creation is. And creation has become a god. The next phrase we want to focus in on day 3 is, they produce, it says, according to their various kinds, in verse 11. Then in verse 12 it repeats it twice, according to their kinds, and then once again, according to their kinds. Each fruit, each vegetable, and next week when we move into life, the animals and human beings, we see the same is true for them, that each produces after its own kind. Why is this significant? Significant because it shows us God is orderly, God is organized, God has a plan, and God's the one who sets it in motion. He's the one who created the first, and every single one after that will follow in line. Why this is significant is because what's taught today is, what is it called? We have a few things, evolution and random selection. Is there anything random about every single thing created will produce after its kind? No, that's not random. There was a first, and God says, according to their various kinds, according to their kinds, according to their kinds, that God is the initiator, He's the origin, and everything will come after it exactly like He tells it. And the other thing we see in this is creation in itself does not have creative power. We'll see a little bit of this differently when we talk about human beings next week. But in terms of creation itself, the earth does not have power in itself to give life or to create something new that didn't exist before. What Genesis teaches us is God can do that. But what evolution has begun to do is say that the earth can give life. The earth can create. The earth can be God. Creation can play the place of God. Day 3 ends with the phrase, and God saw it, and He saw that it was good. So we haven't focused in on this phrase up to this point, but after every single day, God says, and He saw it, and it was good. And He saw it, and it was good. In day 3, He created the seas, the lakes, dry land, vegetation. So what does this mean for us? Let's imagine, which I imagine most of you will want to, a warm summer day right now. And you go down to the lake or a pond or a pool and go swimming, and it's 82 degrees out and the sun is bright and shining, and you're enjoying swimming there. What are you enjoying? You might say, I'm enjoying the heat. I'm enjoying the water. I'm enjoying hanging out with my family. But on the bottom line, according to this, everything God created is good. So when you're enjoying that day, what are you enjoying? You're enjoying the goodness of God. Why? Because the sun, it's good. The water, it's good. Why is it there? Because God is good, and He wants you to enjoy His creation, and He wants you to enjoy Him. When you eat life-giving sustenance like apples and fruits and the food that He made, what are you enjoying? Are you enjoying the taste? Yes. Are you enjoying the fruit? Yes. But what else are you enjoying? You're enjoying the goodness of God. Because He gave that to you, because He wanted to show His goodness, and He wanted you to enjoy it. Now moving into day 4. If you'll notice on the back of the bulletins it said we'll go to verse 25, but we're going to go to verse 19 today, because I didn't think people wanted to be here 50 minutes, and that's about how long it would have taken. So day 4 is the last day we're going to cover today. And in day 4 of creation, God says, let there be lights in the vault of the sky to separate the day from night. And let them serve, this is verse 14, and let them serve as signs to mark sacred times and days and years. And let them be lights in the vault of the sky to give light to the earth. And it was so. God made 2 great lights, the greater to govern the day, and the lesser light to govern the night. And He also made the stars. God set them in the vault of the sky to give light to the earth, to govern the day from night, to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. So on this day, day 4, God creates the sun, and He creates the moon, and He creates the stars to help give light to the earth. And one of the beautiful things we see in this is in creation, and just creating the day, what is God doing? He's saying there's a time for light, there's a time for darkness, there's a time for work, and there's a time for rest. Can you imagine if there wasn't nighttime? Just think about our country. How many more workaholics do you think we would have in our country if it was just daytime all the time? Maybe one, maybe 2. Because we love to work. And we find purpose in work. But God writes into creation. Creation is not supposed to just be work. You're supposed to enjoy it. And you're supposed to rest. And it's so important to Him that He writes it into the day that at nighttime, it's going to be night, so that there's a clear distinction between day and night. And in this, we begin to see God's graciousness, because He doesn't want a bunch of slaves. He doesn't want a bunch of workaholics. He wants people who will slow down and enjoy creation and enjoy Him. And the next thing He creates on this day, and I love the way it says it. At the very end of verse 16, He says, He also made the stars. Oh yeah. He made the sun, the moon, and also the stars. Almost as if it's kind of like an afterthought. But when we think about the stars, just like we thought about the concept of Mother Earth, what has happened with the stars today? And it's not just today, it's been happening for a long time. It's that people will look to the stars for something. What do they look to the stars for? So, the stars. What do people do with the stars? The stars have become something very significant to a lot of people. In that people will look to the stars to tell them, is this a good day for me? Is this a good day for me to invest in money? Is this a good day for me to have good health? Is this a good day for me based on whether the time of the year we were born? Or all of these different things. Well, what is it doing? When someone does this, they're saying, creation, please give me wisdom on how to live my life. Please give me wisdom on what type of decisions I should make. Please tell me how I'm supposed to live. Please guide my life. What's happening is, who's the source of wisdom? God. Who's the source of life? God. And who have we go to now? Creation. Were stars put there to tell us our destiny? No. Were stars put there to be a source of direction for us in terms of how we live our life? No. The stars were put there in verse 14 to serve as signs, to mark sacred times and days and years. To serve as signs, to mark sacred times and days and years. Let's think about this for a second. For those of you who can remember this summer, there was a solar eclipse. How many of you knew the solar eclipse was going to happen before it happened? How? And do you know if you get online right now, you can find out when the next one will be, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one, for the next 150 years? How is that possible? It's because when God created the stars on day 4, He made it a mathematical equation. It's exact. It doesn't mess up. It doesn't change. It's the same today as it was then. It's going to be the same as long as this creation is here. What's so amazing about that? What's so amazing about that is they've actually made a computer program now with the stars. Because this is so exact, the formulas don't change, that you can get on this program called Starry Night, and you can put in a date and a time, and you can look and see exactly what the sky looked like at that point. So let's say 33 AD Bethlehem. And that's what people have begun to do now, where they can go in and place Jesus' birth and look at the sky and see what it's like. And go looking for the star that we were told was existed. And what they've found is Jupiter, which is known as the king star because it's the biggest. And then the brightest star. They come together. And it appears that they stop over Bethlehem. It's like, oh wow, that's amazing. You can find the star. What's so amazing about this is this. This is day 4 the stars were created. So on day 4, God said, here, I'm going to write in the stars the day that I become a human being to save human beings from their sin. 2 days before I create human beings. So God writes in the stars the story of salvation, the story of how He's going to become the Savior of mankind before He creates mankind. Why would He do that? If there's any of us, if I know beforehand what someone's going to do, why would I willingly do it anyways? And that's what we see God do in creation. But why? Because He wants us to know Him. He wants us to know Him. Think about this. Would we know of God's self-sacrificing love without Jesus coming to earth? No. Would we know what God is like without all the stories of how Jesus lived his life, how he died, how he was crucified, and how he rose again? No. So God, in creation, begins to write the story, even in the stars, so that creation itself will scream, "This is what I'm like. Know me." As we close today, this is what I want us to think about. We have a God who wants to be known. Not a God that shies away from pain, not a God that shies away from hard situations, but a God that will willingly pursue that, and willingly put himself in those positions so that we can know him. We can know what he's like. We have a creative God. We have a life-giving God. We have a loving God. We have a good God. We have a kind God. We have a God that enjoys when we enjoy him. And we have a God that deserves to be worshipped, deserves to be enjoyed, and deserves for us to spend our days seeking to know him. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for today. We thank you that you're a good God. We thank you that you love us. We thank you for how you wrote into creation the story of who you are. And I just pray for us today as we leave, we would have a desire to know you, a desire to be with you, and a desire to worship you with all that we are. May you fill us with joy and fill us with your Spirit. And that's all I seek in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.